Muslims are very reactionary. They react and then they want to do things because there's no original thought. Halal drugs, and I think that would be a multi-billion, if not a trillion-dollar industry if they did that. But they don't see it because they're stuck in, following.
As you mentioned, Sheikh, that the recent possible adoption of Cornell University in some of the Middle East countries. So I would say that why you need to adopt something when you already had something a few centuries ago in Baghdad and other Muslim lands.
So we have to go into original thinking. And so even if you wanted to copy and mimic the West, then do it properly. You might be much more successful than if you went in a reactionary mode. At the moment, Muslims are very reactionary. They react and then they want to do things because there's no original thought. So science requires you have original thought, you have original thinking, discovery and technology and research. Muslims, talk about in the bioethics field, they acquiesce to the status quo in medicine. There are so many drugs out there that have haram products in them, and the Muslims simply just eat them up, literally. And they say, this is the status quo. We're not going to change it. We're not going to go into research and develop our own halal medicine because that requires now, state funding, and the government needs to understand that we don't need the West in order to develop our own halal drugs. And I think that would be a multi-billion, if not a trillion-dollar industry if they did that. But they don't see it because they're stuck in, following and mimicking. They don't have the original thinking power that Muslims had. Muslims of the past, they had originality. They had originality. They were great geniuses, creative thinkers, where they wanted to do things themselves. Look at just how we, produced the Urdu language. The Urdu language was only 300 years old, but it became such an influential language. SubhanAllah. That's the simple genius of the Muslim, mind. Urdu obviously comes from the Turkish word, which means an army. And the Mughals saw that there was a need to unite all the soldiers across the empire so that they can speak one language. Otherwise, people were speaking Hindi and Marathi and Bangla and Gujarati and Farsi and Urdu and Pashto and all of that. So they said that we need to unite the personnel in the army so that they can communicate in one language. So they invented one. It's called Urdu.
Yep, and they were very successful. And
very successful.
So it seems like as modern Muslims, we are more kind of into adoption mode compared to innovation mode. That's what I feel like. And again, one last question on, again, this is the same article about the agreements, disagreements, and disunity. Sometimes it feels like a thin line we play between the disagreement part and the disunity part. So what lessons can we derive from early Muslims, like during the times of the Prophet or early Khulafa Rashidin, who still had disagreements, but they were able to stay united? We still have disagreements, but we are not united. So how can we bridge those gaps?
Yeah, there's a lot of ethics that goes into that kind of equation. Are you training the human being to be better human beings, or are you trying to develop human beings who just make money? I think that the whole idea of capitalism comes in, and secularism comes in. What is your end goal? Your end goal as human beings is to be a better human being, I hope, so that you can get into Jannah, basically. So I think the early Muslims, they always had a focus on the end goal. Now we don't have an end goal. We don't have a goal period. And our goal is just understand the P&L, profit loss, risk management and aversion to kind of creativity and all of that. So I think a mindset would do a lot of wonders. I think but just injecting the idea of absolute intellectual independence based on the Quran and Sunnah. I mean, the Quran and Sunnah gives you guardrails. Stay within these parameters and you can do anything you want to. But don't go outside into shirk, don't go outside into doing something that's harmful, detrimental to the human being, to human society, and don't create establishments of dhulm and injustice. I think if you stay within the moral parameters of Islamic thinking, then you can be as creative and as genius as you want. And the Muslims ruled the world, and within 30 years, Uthman radiyallahu anhu, I mean, he was the Khalifa all the way from, Morocco to, Sindh in India.
Yeah. So
but that was in 30 years they managed to do that. How did they do that if they weren't seen as the benefactors of humanity? So I think that's what they gained from the Prophet. And the Prophet came as a rahmah for everybody. So he showed that he is full of rahmah and compassion, and he didn't want any human being to suffer necessarily. But he also wanted human beings to eventually get into Jannah. So that was his message, his mission. That you live this life, yes, but you have to think about another life.
Definitely. So I love your approach about academics, theology. And if I recall something about in this country, like 100 years ago, how Catholics were treated, right? At some point, they were in a similar or maybe worse situation. They were sidelined. What they have done, they have invested in academics. They have established their institution. They invested in research.
Yeah.
And now they invested in healthcare. And you see like a lot of hospitals across the US, which are Catholic hospitals.
Yeah.
And why hasn't Muslims were able to adopt a similar strategy or a similar blueprint? And where we are lagging behind, like
I think
nobody stopped us.
Unfortunately, through the colonization, I think it's called what I call it, the post-colonial trauma syndrome. Right? We still suffer from, colonial PTSD.
How long is it going to take?
Yeah, all of us, and we haven't recovered from that. And I think so. What we need to do is we need to kind of, jettison that and shed that skin, and so we will no longer colonized by anybody. We do. In the US, you're free, your own man, you're a free man. It's a free country. I can think the way I want to, and so Islam gives you the same prerogative that if you, the thing is that Tawheed is so revolutionary and so liberating that if you believe in the eternal, who is the eternal? Allah. Now, eternal means what? He is above time and space. He's not restricted by time and space, right? But everything else that you think of, even science is restricted by the laws of science, right? But if you believe in Allah, who is eternal and He has no time, no space, He is above everything. So when a Muslim is now resorting to the eternal creativity of Allah, he is so free. He can think as much as he wants, as long as he doesn't end up in hell.
All right.
Yeah.
So do you think it's the weakness and belief of today's Muslims, we are placing ourselves into this mental prison and limiting our abilities and self and not believing ourselves as we're supposed to?
Yes.
Is that one of the reasons?
It was one, exactly. You hit the nail on the head. I think we are in a mental prison because we believe that. We are constrained by Western values, Western ideas.
Right. So as you're an expert in theology, are there any theological tools within Islam such as maqasid al-sharia, like the objectives of Islamic law, that can be used to prioritize unity or division in contemporary times?
Yes, we definitely should look into not just the maqasid, but more than the maqasid, the usul. The principles of Islam, they already accommodate the objectives, is inherently in there.
Right.
It's intertwined. So you don't need to create another madhab based on maqasid. We're already there. The whole idea of darura, necessity, is there in our foundational understanding of fiqh. But it's an exception. Darura, necessity, is an exception. It's not the rule. So you can't make the rule, the exception to the rule, a norm. It's not a norm. It's something outside of the norm. They're anomalies. Okay, you accommodate the anomalies because they exist. Okay, and that's the whole idea of minorities in Islamic law. That if you have minorities living with you, like you have Hindus, or you have Zoroastrians, or you have people from other denominations in your Muslim country, then the Muslim state will not interfere with their law. They'll let them rule the way they want, as long as they maintain the civil standards.
Right.
And so on. So I'm saying that's anomaly. But you can't say that when you come to Darul Islam, or now what you call it, Sikhs and all Zoroastrians and all Hindus will be accommodated by, because that's an exception to the law of Islam. Okay? So we accommodate exceptions by definition, but you can't say that the maqasid of Islam is that we must accommodate Hindus. There's a difference in thinking. Yeah? Accommodation is good because that's part of the human construct. Muslims, when they ruled in India, they were a minority. They weren't a majority. And they accommodated the Hindus in so many different ways. We never blew up temples. In Mughal India, there's not a single case where a Mughal destroyed a Hindu temple. Not a single case. Meaning we are accommodating as part of our construct of accommodating anomalies, exceptions. Okay, but we didn't make it a principle that we have to do this because it's our religion. See, it is the way it is, where we believe in a kind of what you call coexistence.
Right.
Yeah. So we were okay. We didn't have any communal violence in Mughal India, and everybody lived peaceful next to each other. In fact, Mughals, some historians say they were too accommodating.
Right.